Hey, Inspired Vision 8th graders, welcome to part 2 of our 8th grade STAAR TEKS review, and this is testing on TEKS 8.7. If you guys are not on questions 8 through 15 of the packet that you have in front of you, then please stop this video and we'll start part 1 or part 3. So again, we are about to do part 2. Part 3 is questions 8 through 15. The way that you can search for this is type in Sonne 8th grade STAAR Prep Part 2 into YouTube and you'll be able to find this video again. And once we finish question number 15, I will start part 3 for the next set of questions.
Daddy.
So we are going to do number 8 first. Number 8 is talking about lateral surface area. Whenever we're doing questions about lateral surface area, which is our objectives for this time, we got to use a different formula. That different formula is right here for surface area, and we got to talk about what type of shape we have. Since we're talking about a shed, and it says right here rectangular prism, we're going to use the prism formula. And lateral surface area is just two little numbers, so the surface area is the perimeter times the height. Now the hardest thing about these questions, just like when we were doing our volume questions, is to figure out the perimeter. And the shape that makes our perimeter is either the top or the bottom. In this case, it is our bottom, but it's the same dimensions as our top. So this top is the same as the bottom, which is right here. Same thing. And it is 14 by 7. Now be careful here, it's talking about perimeter. Perimeter means to add all of our sides. So we can either take 14 times 2 plus 7 times 2, or we can think, here I'm going to draw another little shape of this rectangle, or we can think just add up all our sides. Okay, go ahead and figure out, tell me what the perimeter is real quick. Alright, you should have gotten 42. So when we have our answer, put it in parentheses like this. And this is our surface area. Sometimes you see surface area just with an S, or you see it with SA. Alright, so I'm going to show you two different ways to show surface area right here. Now the last thing we have to do is worry about our height. Now our height is just the number that's going up and down in the problem. And the number that's going up and down vertically is 8. So all we have to do here is do 42 times 8. Now, if anything in this video didn't make sense, please raise your hand or pause the video and ask the teacher in the room for help. Alright, next question. Number 9. Number 9, we're talking about a birdhouse. In the birdhouse, we got to figure out, are we doing lateral surface area or total surface area? Now, this one doesn't come out and say exactly what we're doing, but it does say that we're painting the outside walls. If we're not doing the top or the bottom, then we have lateral surface area again. Now the next thing is lateral surface of what? And since it's talking about rectangle walls, then we have another prism. If it was talking about a triangle, then that's a pyramid. If it's cylinder, has a circle, so rounded. So we have prism, so the surface area is perimeter times the height. Okay, again, we got to figure out the perimeter of what type of shape. And this one's not as obvious, but it does say rectangle top, so it's a rectangle. So let me fill in the missing sides here, and we got a lot of numbers to work with. So you got to pay attention that only this 10 goes to the rectangle and this 6. So your shape is this. Now we need to add all of our sides. And if we add all those sides, we have what number? Okay, now we also need to worry about our height. Now our height has nothing to do with this door right here. Our height of the birdhouse is right here. This is the one that's going up and down. So our height is 10. And this was makes this question a little bit more or more challenging than the last question, is because we just found the birdhouse right here. Our birdhouse is 320, but we're not finished with the question. We have a doorway that's right here. In this doorway, we have to figure out its area. Now, its area of a door is right here, base times height. I'm going to change colors for this doorway, just so you can see it. So our door is base times height. Well, our door is only using the numbers 5 and 4. In the doorway, we multiply these together and we get 20. So to finish off our question, we need to do our birdhouse minus the door. Because we're not painting the doorway. And you should have the answer of 300. Okay, next question. Alright, our new question. Question number 10. This one's a little bit harder because we don't have a picture. So it might actually help us if we draw a picture. Now, the first word that you come up with that tells us what's going on is this. Rectangular prism. So if we have a rectangular prism and it's talking about the outside of the gift box, then that means we have a rectangle as our base and a rectangle as our top. And then you just connect the corners. Now if you can't draw this, I completely understand, but it does help us figure out what's going on. Now the other thing that really helps is to know where these numbers go. So it's 3.2 feet long, 2.7 feet wide. So the width doesn't go up and down, only the height is the one that's going up and down. The width is supposed to be going side to side. Or actually not side to side, it's going to the back. So it's still kind of side by side, but the main thing in here is it's not the one going up and down. The one going up and down is the 2.7. So the 2.7 is your height. That's important to keep in mind as we keep going. Now also as we keep going, we have total surface area. So our total surface area is right here, which is a totally different formula. Well, not totally different. We just have to add our base twice. So it's PH plus 2 times the base. Okay, this is a little bit different. Let's start with what we know, which is the perimeter. And our perimeter is the top or bottom, and it's a rectangle. And in our perimeter of our rectangle, we have 3.2 and 2.1. So if you add up all of those, or multiply them times 2, you should have 10.6. And our height that we're talking about in the problem is the one with the little h, is 2.7. Alright, now, something different is this base means the area of the base. To find the area of the base, you're not adding, you multiply the 3.2 and the 2.1, because the 2.1 and 3.2 are still talking about the base, but you multiply both of these together, you have 6.72. Now, we also need to bring down the plus 2. If you're using parentheses just like I did, you can type all of this in your calculator at once. If you're doing it by hand, then you're going to want to multiply these two numbers first, then multiply these two numbers, and then add them together, because you have to follow order of operations. But let's see if you can get the answer. Okay, you should have gotten 42.06. The final answer to this question is the one that is closest, since they used the word closest, so you should have picked B. Okay, next question. This time we're going to talk about Pythagorean theorem. Remember, Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. The other thing to keep in mind before I show you the problem is c is always the longest side. And it doesn't matter a and b. They just have to be the two short sides. Okay, so let's see what we're getting into. Number 11, this one says which measurements could not be a right triangle. And whenever they say right triangle, you have to use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay, so the only thing I have to go by on A is this formula. I don't have a picture. The only thing we can do is say that this 10 is our C. So if that 10 is our C, we're going to say either one of these is my A and my B. And the C, if I square 6 and then I add 8 squared, if I get 10 squared. Alright, so all you need to do is type this in your calculator, 6 squared. Make sure you use your x squared key when you're doing the squared. 6 squared should be 36. 8 squared is 64. And if I add those together, I want to see if I get 10 squared, which is 100. Now you tell me, are these the same? Yes, they are the same. Now, if they're the same, then this is not my answer because I want the one that's not the side lengths. Okay, next question. I'm going to change colors. We're going to do the same thing. As we're looking at these numbers, our longest side has to be C. So then I'm going to do 12 squared plus 35 squared equals 37 squared. Let's see if that works. 12 squared is 144. 35 squared is 1,225. And if I add those together, I want to see if I get the same thing as 37 squared. And both of these are 1,339. Okay, so we've got to do the next question. Next question, we have 4 squared, 6 squared, 10 squared. So the 10 is the longest side and that has to be the C. So then we set this up, 4 squared plus 6 squared equals 10 squared. Remember, we're squaring, so 4 squared is not 8. 4 squared is 16. So it's going to be 16 plus 36. If you add both of these together, you get 52, and if you do 10 squared, you get 100. These are not equal to each other. So since they're not equal to each other, I can put a slash through that equal sign, meaning they're not equal to each other, and that would make C my answer. Now, just to double check, let's see what D is, because you never want to just pick an answer before confirming the last answer choice, especially when it's this easy. Let's see if this makes sense. Okay, 10 squared is 100. And then if I add 24 squared to it, I get 676. 26 squared is also 676. Alright, these are both the same number, so that makes D not my answer choice. Okay, moving on. Here is number 12. Number 12, they gave us a picture. Don't feel overwhelmed by this picture because all we need to do is pick out the triangle that we need. Alright, if you read it, we have a picture frame, and then we want the length of the frame support. So they want this. So if you look at it, we actually have several shapes going on. We have a triangle here, but it's really making a rectangle, and then we have a triangle here. I'm going to highlight the only thing that's important, which is this triangle right here. This is the only thing you should be focused on. Alright, now if you look at this triangle, the next thing we would want to do is label our A, our B, and our C. Because whenever we need to find a distance or a length and we have two sides and we want to find the third side, we can use Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so our A here, this is a short side, so this can be our A. Our B isn't quite as obvious. If we take a look at this side, which we have labeled as support, and this side, which is a dotted line, the one that's longer is the one that's slanted, and it's also the one that's crossed from the vertical or from the 90-degree angle. So this has to be our C. So this means this has to be our B. Now, if you also notice about our B, it's the same as this 16. It's the same length from top to bottom. So that means A is 4.2, our B is 16, and our C we don't know. So in order to finish this question, we got to type 4.2 squared in our calculator and then add 16 squared in our calculator. 4.2 is 16.74. 16 squared is 256. Remember, either type it all in your calculator all at once or type them both individually and then add them together. Otherwise, you'll get a mistake because of order of operations. Okay, now, we are not finished with this question. We have our answer to c squared. What we have to do next is take the square root. Because we don't have our answer until we take the square root of this number. Now the square root key, if you're not familiar with it, you have to hit the second key on your calculator, which is the blue key at the top left, and then hit x squared. If you hit x squared, it has this symbol above it. That means the square roots. So we're taking the square root of 273.64, type that in your calculator, and that'll give us the value of c. And you're going to have 16.54 if you did this right. If you didn't do it right, this is really important before we do our next questions. Make sure you raise your hand. Alright, finally, we're looking for the closest value. If we round this number up, we get 17. And that makes D our answer choice. Alright, we have 3 more questions to go. Next question. We have a ladder leaning against the side of a house. So the first thing we want to do is label our triangle. Since we have 2 sides given and we want to find the third side, we're going to use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So our c has to be our longest side. And our longest side here is across from the 90-degree angle, which is also the slanted side of the triangle. And that is our c. So that means 3 could be our a, and this letter D, which is what we're trying to find, could be our b. So don't get confused. They're using 2 variables to mean the same thing. We want to find the top of the ladder to the ground, which is the B, which is also the D. Same thing. Once we figure out what this is from top to bottom, which is one of our short sides, we have our answer. Alright, so let's plug in what we know. We know A is 3 squared. We do not know B, and we know C is 10 squared. This time we're not just going to add them together. This time we have to subtract to find our B. But before we subtract, let's figure out what 3 squared is. So type that in. 3 squared is 9. 10 squared is 100. And then if we try to get B by itself, we're going to subtract 9 on both sides because we're trying to solve for B. This makes B squared equal to 91. Now, just like the last problem, whenever we have something squared, we have to take the square root of both sides. If we take the square root of 91, you're hitting your second x squared key. Type in 91, and you have B to be what answer? You should have 9.53. 9.53 is really close to answer J. Okay, 2 questions left. Okay, if you read number 14, it's talking about Felix trying to get to work. And he actually has 2 paths he could take. He starts here, no matter which path he takes, and he could walk this way, and then this way. So let's call this the long way around. And to find that, you just add these together. Now, I'm going to change colors because we actually have another way we could take. We could take this diagonal. So let's call that the bike path since they labeled that for us. Now, the bike path we do not know. However, if we look at the picture and ignore this top part of the picture and just focus on this, this is a triangle. And since it's a triangle, we can use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. We can always use Pythagorean theorem when we know 2 sides and we're trying to find a third side. So the 2 sides we know is 2.4 and 7, but we got to figure out what c is. C is the longest side, which is across from the 90-degree angle. It's the side that's slanted. So our bike path is the C. So that makes A, you can make A either one of these. If I say A is 2.4, then that makes my B 0.7. If you said A is 0.7, then your B would be 2.4. Either way, you're going to get the answer. Okay, now, remember, type all of this in your calculator all at once with parentheses, or get this answer, 2.4 squared, and then write 0.7 squared. I'm going to do it that way just so you can see what's going on. That way, if you made a mistake, you see what happened. 2.4 squared is 5.76. 0.7 squared is 0.49. If you added them all together, you should have 6.25. Now remember, we're not finished yet. We have to take the square root. To take the square root of both sides, you have to hit the second x squared key. And we're almost finished with the problem. I'm just writing it out. Hopefully you already have the answer. You should have 2.5. Okay, now, I know you got really excited and you thought you were finished. You are not finished. We just found the bike path. So don't try to pick H as your answer. Because if you read this, it says how much further would he travel? To figure out how much further, that means we have to subtract. So we have to figure out what our long way around was, which I didn't finish up there. I should have. Maybe you finished it. It's 3.1. So to figure out how much farther is, we have to do 3.1 minus 2.5. This is to tell us how much shorter or how much time he saved. And you have 0.6. So don't get sidetracked by picking the easy answer. We had to read that second part to make sure we got it. All right, last question. This question, we have two shaded squares. Then they say SR, which is from here to here, is 4. Then ST is 8. And they want to know what the length of PQ is. PQ is all the way over here. All the way over here, let's call this X, because I don't know what's going on in this problem yet. Okay, so here's what's going on. PQ is part of a triangle. This triangle is right here. PQ is also the longest part of the triangle, so that makes it the C. We don't know any other numbers but this 8 and the 4, but what we do know is if we're going to focus on this triangle, we need to figure out what A is and B is, so we can use Pythagorean theorem right there. Alright, now, it does say that these two shaded regions are squares. So if it's a square, that makes everything the same side. So if this is 8, this is also 8, and this is also 8. And if those are 8, that makes my A also 8, because it's a square. Square means you have the same side on all the sides. And the same thing happens with my 4. That would make this 4, this 4, and this 4, which would make my B also 4. So then if I use Pythagorean theorem, we have everything we need. My A in this problem is 8 squared. My B in this problem is 4. We're trying to find C, which is that PQ side. that we said was our x or our c. Okay, so if I finish this, 88 squared is 64 plus 16. If I add both of those together, we have 80. And then you have to remember to take the square root both sides. And if I take the square root, we have this. Now take a look at our answers. Our answer, they didn't actually finish this. Because if we take the square root of 80, we have 8.944. But none of my answers are 8.944. So they actually used this answer, which is a perfectly fine way. That's called in radical form. They used the radical form as the answer. Okay, so our answer is A. Alright, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully this made sense. Make sure you do 4 questions in tutoring later on in this week. If you get 3 out of the 4 questions right, you are finished with tutoring for the week. Until next time.